Hey guys, thanks a lot for tuning in. My nickname is iFacePalm, and in this episode we're going to take a closer look at the Soviet T8 Premium T-44-100 medium tank. And during this tank review we'll be looking into whether if it's worth the gold next time it arrives to the premium shop, how its tank statistics looks. I'll compare its stats against several other T8 medium tanks, which will be followed up with an extensive armor profile rundown with focus on its weak spots and strengths. Then afterwards I will take you guys alongside two very recent battles, which hopefully will give you a good idea of this tank in action. And finally I will finish up with an extended sum up and my rating of this tank. Okay guys, let's get started. Okay, so what is the T-44-100 all about? Is it any good? And is it worth picking up next time it will be featured in the premium shop? Well, right off the bat the T-44-100 might seem kinda average, but what makes this tank very interesting is that the tank as a complete package seems to be capable of offering something unique to its tank commander, and that is a rather interesting merge between two tank classes. Recently, whenever Wargaming have introduced a new tank to the game, they seem to heavily penalize a tank on its hidden statistics. Like for example, gun handling, poor ground resistances that makes even the strongest engine, yeah, you guessed it, surprisingly weak. Yes, the T-44-100 is definitely not a new tank, but then again, it wasn't that long time ago that it received some nice buffs, and that is especially in regards of the hidden stats department. But was it enough? And is it good enough for today's meta? Also, if you have already seen my video on my top 3 favorite premium tanks for each tier, then you might remember that the T-44-100 actually took a spot on the list. But why for a tank that seems to be slightly above average? And another quite interesting question is, why do I more often than not recommend this tank when asked? Because what makes the T-44-100 special? That is very skill demanding in regarding of acquiring just as good result as you would in your Progetto, in your CS52 list, or any other decent tier 8 medium tank. But guys, let's take a look by doing a quick stats rundown with my current crew and tank setup. Okay, so for the crew. So my current crew is primarily focused in Brothers in Arms. Then I can highly recommend gun handling skills alongside view range, camouflage, repair skills, and firefighting. Do notice that the firefighting skill could easily have been picked beforehand, and that is simply because this tank more often than not becomes set on fire. My very first 5 games in the tank resulted in catching fire in every single game. For the equipment, I've selected Commander's Vision System, Vertical Stabilizer, and Ventilation. I'll go into more details why I've selected the following equipment during this stats rundown. For the ammunition, I've selected 20 AP shells, which each are capable of delivering 250 alpha damage. You might be thinking 250 is really not a lot, so you will definitely have your work cut out for you. And this we also see the average penetration of 190. And not only that, it also features a shell velocity that is far from impressive with only 880. Yes, they are quite cheap of only 252 silver per shot, then again, that's really the value. This is also why I have selected 34 APCR shells for this particular tank, because quite often you will be forced to use those. But what you get in return is an average penetration of 247. It's not really an amazing figure, but it's definitely way better than its AP shells. And furthermore, you also get a very decent shell velocity of 1100 meters per second. But of course, yes, you're going to pay 4400. And last, I have 2 high explosive shells that are capable of dealing an average damage of 330. But definitely the thing here to notice is that you are facing tier 9 or even tier 10 tanks. Then you definitely can see that even the APCR shells are barely enough. And 4400 silver for a 250 alpha damage shot, that can definitely become costly very fast. So far, nothing impressive. For the consumables, I have a small repair kit, small first aid kit, and extra combat rations. And you might be wondering, I just mentioned previously about the fire extinguisher, why don't I have one? Well, I can guarantee you that I definitely had it previously, but now that my crew is semi-decent at the firefighting skills, I have decided that for this particular tank, I really want those extra combat rations. Okay guys, so we had a quite mediocre damage of 250 alpha, 190 average penetration, which is definitely nothing special. What about the rate of fire? Well, 9.23, which translates in a reload speed of 6.5 seconds with my current setup. You can of course switch the Commander's Vision System with, for example, with a gun rammer, which will result in a reload speed of 5.85 seconds. But for my playstyle with my current setup, then I'm going for the Commander Vision System. And the primary reason for this is that I I tend very often to use this tank in a light tank role, especially during mid to late game, where it is very often that there are very few, if any, light tanks left. The vertical stabilizer is a must in my opinion, but the ventilation system alternatively could also be replaced with a gun rammer. Personally, I don't feel there's a need for improved rotation mechanism, and this we will definitely see in the tank comparison, where we are going to take a look at its hidden gun statistics. And you might also be wondering, why don't I even have any coated optics on it? Well, the thing is that because I have a commander's vision system that removes that extra concealment, and because I have an improved ventilation system that adds that 8.5%, we are capable of reaching a view range of 446. Meaning, if I didn't use these improved vent systems, then yes, it would definitely be viable to remove the commander's vision system and add a coated optics, which would definitely result in a vastly improved view range. And yes, previously I have been playing this tank with the coated optics, but just to test it out, I have been playing with the commander's vision system and without the coated optics with quite some success. And last, I just wanted to mention that the other reason why I wanted to have such expensive bond equipment on my tank, it's simply because I thought this tank. But right off the bat, it might seem why, right? Okay, let's continue. So the tank features a beautiful gun traverse speed of 55.4 degrees. Yes, that's very fast. And not only that, it features a rather decent gun depression of -7 degrees. And check this, guys, aiming time 1.73 seconds alongside a gun dispersion of 0.3. You might be thinking, this looks very good, right? Well, just wait until we do the tank comparison. So the average damage per minute for the T-44-100 with the current setup is 2308. Doesn't really seem groundbreaking in any way. Of course, if we added the gun rammer, it would definitely be helped out. Right off the bat, it just seems the gun handling alongside the gun traverse speed are really standing out, where damage or average penetration are really mediocre at best, including a gun depression that also seems to place it rather in the middle. So what is it about the tank that made me invest in two bond equipment? Well, let's continue. So the HP pool, 1350, not bad at all. And when looking at its armor, we have a hull armor of 90, 75, 45, and a turret armor of 190, 130, 100, which doesn't seem very special either, right? So what about the engine power? Well, 760 horsepower per ton translates the 33 tons tank to 22.49 horsepower per ton, which definitely is decent. And furthermore, when you look at the top speed, 52 and 23 reverse, and that is without a turbocharger. The fun part here is that those 23 reverse, they really indicate what kind of tank this is, because it is a rather rare figure on a medium tank that doesn't have a turbocharger fitted. And not only that, guys, check the traverse speed, 66.63 degrees. It's nuts. Yes, this tank is like a ballerina on the battlefield. And for the last figures, the tank features a very decent camo figures of 36.43 when stationary and 28.1 when moving. And of course the 446 meter view range, which we were looking at just before. Okay guys, let's take a look at the tank comparison. Okay guys, so here we have the tank comparison where we are comparing the T-44-100 versus the T-54 Mod 1, the T-44, Panzer 58, STA-2, Centurion 5.1 and the Type 59. What to notice here is of course that the T-44 is a Tech 3 tank, and for this particular tank I have fitted the competitive 250 alpha damage gun rather than the 390 alpha, and furthermore the Type 59 is of course a preferential matchmaking tank. But there's a reason for why I have selected this particular tank for this comparison, and I will show you guys. So for the firepower, we have of course the DPM, where the T-44-100 features a base DPM of 2000, and in this tank comparison it seems definitely rather decent and actually some of the best. But do keep in mind that what these tanks have in common is an alpha damage that ranges between 250 and 230. And not only that, what these tanks have in common is that they all have quite a decent horsepower per ton, because yes, there are definitely a lot of tier 8 medium tanks in World of Tanks. But the thing is that the T-44-100 is really all about its mobility, and that of course has a price. And that price we not only see in regards of the alpha damage, but also in regards of the average penetration, because 190, yes, is definitely quite ordinary for the Russian tanks, but it's definitely not standing out here, because we directly see when we compare it against any of the other nations, they are simply better. And regarding better, then check the shell velocity, because yes, all the Soviet shell velocity is honestly really bad. And when you look at the competitors, they check this guy. The fun part is of course that every single of these tanks, they actually use AP shells. So the shell velocity for an ordinary AP shell, especially on the Panzer 58 or the STA-2, is really that much better. But what about the premium rounds? Well, let's take a look. There we go. And do notice that all the tanks here uses APCR as gold, besides the STA-2, which uses heat. And this we directly see in the shell velocity. velocity. So suddenly all the Soviet tanks are sharing a rather mediocre penetration of 247 can definitely be a challenge, especially if you are facing tier 9 or tier 10 tanks. But even here, the other nationalities are just that much better, especially the STA-2. Of course, the STA-2 uses those heat, so yes, it will of course be punished the shield velocity, and that we directly see here of 988 meters per second, where our T-44-100's 1100 places it around the middle. Do notice here that the Panzer 58 has a beautiful shield velocity of 1478 alongside the second best average penetration in this comparison. So right off the bat here, the Panzer 58 just seems that much better. Besides of course the DPM, but it's just 125 base. But what about the gun handling? Well, let's take a look. So the T-44-100 features an aiming time of 2 seconds, and as we take a look here, this is just the preferential Type 59 that has a 2 second of aim time. But what about the dispersion? Well, 035. Well, the 035 doesn't really seem to stand out here and definitely places it around the middle. But check this guys, because when we are going to look at the hidden gun statistics while moving 0.12, especially interesting comparison will be against the T-54 Mod 1, because yes, in some way the T-54 Mod 1 is a very similar version to the T-44-100, but that sacrifices that mobility to gain some armor. And here you can see the gigantic sacrifice that you have to make for that extra thick armor plate. And another interesting thing to notice here is that the Tech 3 T-44 actually have very decent figures guys, that are really offering you some of the best gun handling in game. So yes, if you enjoy your T-44 with the 250 alpha damage gun, then it's almost certain that you're going to enjoy the T-44-100, because it is just better. And likewise, if you have already played with the T-44 and do not like the playstyle of the T-44 or the sacrifices it had to make to gain the mobility, then the chances are not big that the T-44-100 will become one of your favorite tanks. Furthermore, also the reason why I wanted the Type 59 in this comparison is simply to show you that yes, the Type 59 have a rather decent gun handling, but as an overall, the T-44-100 is just way better, and that is simply because the base dispersion is that much better by 0.04 alongside when moving or tank traverse. In my humble opinion, the T-44-100 really offers you some epic gun handling when playing aggressively, because yes, if you just sit in a bush and camp, then it doesn't really stand out. But if you play this tank as a mobile aggressive medium tank, then it definitely seems to be in a class of its own. And before we continue to the mobility, let's take a look at the gun depression, where all the Soviet tanks feature 7 degrees of gun depression alongside the Chinese Type 59, but where the other nationalities in this comparison all features a beautiful 10 degrees for the mobility. So we had a forward speed of 52 an hour, and here the interesting part of the T-44-100 is to primarily compare it against the T-54 Mod 1 and the T-44, because those tanks are very similar, both in tank design and playstyle, with of course the exception that the T-54 Mod 1 has that better armor at the cost of quite horrible gun handling for a medium tank. And if you already have seen my T-54 Mod 1 tank review, you might remember that this was one of my biggest critique of the T-54 Mod 1, because it just seemed to be a tank that is yes built for aggressive playstyle, but the gun is just not allowing you to play aggressively, as it very often tends to miss targets even at close up, especially if we compare it against any of the other tanks here. So back again to the mobility. So it was 52 an hour forward, I placed it around the middle here, and a reverse speed of 23. Definitely decent and the best together with the T-44 and the STA-2. But then again, those forward speed and reverse speed doesn't really say us the full truth, because we of course want to see how the power to weight ratio looks. And yes, 22.69, that is very decent indeed, and it's actually the best here. It's not by much. Yes, you can definitely see a bigger difference when you compare it against the non-Soviet tanks, but then again, it's not really like a groundbreaking difference between 22 horsepower and 19 or 18 horsepower. So what about the terrain resistances? And here's the beauty. Check this guys, 0.5. This means that the T-44-100 on hard terrain will actually feel more like a tank that has 44 horsepower per ton. This difference is just staggering, because yes, the T-54 Mod 1, it had its horsepower per ton heavily buffed, but the terrain resistances stayed the same, and the difference between 0.5 and 1.1 terrain resistances are really like night and day, because this tank will feel more like a 20 horsepower per ton on hard terrain, where here we are looking actually at around 45 horsepower per ton. The only tank that comes close is the Panzer 58, but do notice that suddenly those 5.6 horsepower per ton less suddenly makes quite a big difference. The trend is of course continued for the medium terrain with 0.6, and last we are finishing up with a soft terrain resistance of 1.5 that together with the Panzer 58 is simply simply stunning. So yeah, the T-44-100 is definitely the king of mobility here, and this we also see when we look at the turret traverse. 48 degrees together with the T-44 places them in the top spot, but when looking at the tank traverse, yeah, that can only be one. 51 degrees tank traverse, that's just nuts. So what about the armor and health? Well, the whole armor is 90, 75, 45, and the turret 190, 130, 100. Do notice the similarities that the T-44-100 has together with the T-44, but in general, as those base figures are not really saying us anything, so we are of course going to take a look at this in the armor profile rundown in just a few seconds. But definitely to notice is that the T-54 Mod 1 have that thicker 30mm of hull armor alongside a slightly more reliable turret armor. But a funny part here is that actually the T-44-100 has 50 HP more than the T-54 Mod 1 and the T-44. Whether it is due to the side skirts, that is a good question. But in this comparison, it places it around the middle, where the STA2 takes the top with 1420, together with the Centurion 5.1, which came very close with 1400. And when taking a look at the last figures, we have the camo of 16.7. Interesting part here is that ironically, the T-44-100 shares its beautiful camo figures with the heavier T-54 Mod 1, but does not share it with the tech tree T-44. In my humble opinion, this doesn't make sense, because the T-44 has just so much in common with the T-44-100, but in the camo, those extra thick armor plates, yeah, they actually help it out, ironically, because after firing you actually have better camo on the T-54 Mod 1 for some unknown reason, and of course when moving. But definitely the point to take from here is that yes, the camo values are significantly better than any of the other medium tanks here, besides the Type 59 which come in close. But for the regular premium tanks, then a base value that ranges between 11 to 14 versus a base value of 16.7, that's actually a big difference. And for the last figures, we got the base view range of 380, which is mediocre at best. This we can directly see here, where even the STA2 and Type 59 are sharing those values, but by the Panzer 58 alongside the Centurion 5.1 definitely standing out. The last figure I just wanted to mention, guys, is the 15% fire chance on the T-44-100. Those 15% chance, they truly feel like 15%, because when you receive a hit right in the front of the tank, then yes, there is unfortunately 15% chance that your tank is going to catch fire. Or I must have some of the worst RNG in the game. Okay guys, let's take a look at the T-44-100's armor profile. Okay guys, so here we have the T-44-100 armor profile. For this scenario, we're going to use the 190mm of AP shells, and let's take a look how it looks in the live view. There we go. The tank definitely have a cupola, but it's not really that gigantic. And of course, if possible, you might as well, of course, just go for the hull, because it only offers you an effective armor of around 150mm down to 140, and at its lower plate, only 130. The turret itself, which is commonly shared among the other T-44 tanks, features some beautiful angles as we see right here. And this means that the effective armor is quite amazing, of more than 300, which will definitely make your shell ricochet. But what about if we move it closer? Well, even here we have values of around 260 to 220, but when moving closer, the values are just below those 200. But what about the gun mantle? Well, the interesting part is that you might be thinking, okay, the gun mantle is completely impossible. You cannot penetrate this tank. But this tank only features this godlike armor right here, because you move a few millimeters more to the right, and we are back again at 190mm. So yeah, if you are facing a T-44-100 or any of its T-44 brothers and you cannot hit its lower plate, then either shoot at the gun mantle, or alternatively just to the right or left of it, below it, or even above it. But the last part here can definitely be challenging. But what about if we are utilizing our 7 degrees of gun depression? Well, let's take a look. So yeah, the upper plate definitely receives a small buff. 180, 170mm is not really groundbreaking. Then even at the spots we just mentioned, the effective armor hasn't really changed. And to make this a bit more clear, let's change the AP shells to the 247mm of APCR rounds. Yeah, now it's very clear where we can penetrate the tank. Let's move the turret back up. If you can hide your lower plate and you can keep moving this tank back and forth, it has that mobility, track traverse speed, turret traverse speed. It can be very tricky for the enemy to hit you and not hit you in one of those super well angled areas, especially as you are just poking up, make that single snapshot. So what about if we side scrape the tank? Well, let's take a look. So yes, at this angle you can definitely ricochet a few shells, but it can definitely be tricky to hide your whole hull armor, because even if we change it to the ordinary 190mm of AP shells, it's still nothing that is groundbreaking, and in general you only tend to bounce shots with your hull when playing against lower tier. But what about if we're shooting at it from its side? And yes, you already see the side skirts, which we see here in the visual view. You have this very thin 6mm of spaced armor, and does that actually do a difference? Well, it does, but it's not really groundbreaking, because for an AP shell you can see here the differences, and then we add suddenly 6mm. But the thing is that when I tested this out in the training room and I fired high explosive shells on this tank, then it seemed to absorb around 50% of the damage. But of course, keep in mind that the high explosive changes are going to come very soon to World of Tanks, and how they're going to precisely affect this mechanic is definitely a good question. But as of now, I only really see a big advantage of the side skirts when someone is using high explosive shells against you. So it will definitely be interesting whether they're also going to remove around 50% of the damage if those changes are going to be implemented. Anyway, so for the side armor. So for the turret, it's starting out with around 150mm, and then at the last part features an effective armor of just above 100mm. For the upper hull, yeah, you can definitely see here that those 6mm spaced armor is just added directly on top for a total of 81mm. And you might be wondering, what is this green spot here? And do notice that it's not on the other side. Well, it's actually where the exhaust pipe is of the tank. Do notice that this exact spot where the track also meets, it actually provides you 20mm of extra spaced armor. Still not enough to bounce anything, at least from this direct angle. And from the rear, the turret features an effective armor of around 100mm, with a slight chance of bouncing a shell if the RG is with you, as it features an effective armor of more than 300 due to its amazing angle, both front and rear. And for the last parts, 37mm and 45. So yeah, the armor profile is definitely interesting. And yes, it's not as thick as it would be on the T-44 mod 1. But the thing is that for the T-54 mod 1, if you are up against tier 9 or tier 10, your armor is completely rendered obsolete. And personally for me, the trade-off of having near to zero armor on your hull for the amazing mobility buff is just worth it. Not only that, even the gun is, yes, really 10 times better than the T-54 mod 1, because the T-50 mod 1, the gun handling really feels like I'm playing with a heavy tank in comparison to this beauty. But enough of me talking about how good the gun handling is. Let's take a look at two recent battles I've had in this T-44-100. Okay guys, so here we are on Live Oaks. I'm playing my T-44-100 and I'm playing together with Ash in his Barask. For this particular matchup we are mid-tier, so it should be okay for this battle. Directly looking what we can encounter here, definitely the T-54 would not surprise me, and the E-75, ST-1 and the Tortoise would most likely go towards the city, so that's hopefully good. Yeah. Well, I can see that even the T-54 on the map is actually towards the city, so that's actually good. Let's see if we can take advantage of that. I can see Ash is pushing aggressively, and I definitely should join that. Beautiful snapshot. And that's the really nice thing about this particular tank, is that those snapshots, if you're really looking for a tank that can do those, it's really hard to find anything better at T8, in my opinion. Well, unless of course you are going for the LT-432 light tank, it just seems to master that even better. But of course, it's a light tank, but this one is not. Of course, always be a bit careful here. Let's see if we can get around, because we know we have the, we have Ash there. Well, let's see. Looking for opportunities here. That projector maybe. Still not looking at us. Okay. Yeah, a lone projector here, no chance. Okay, that's definitely looking dangerous. Beautiful. It's simply stunning how good, how precise some of the snapshots are sometimes. Ah, this one. Shooting on the turret can definitely be challenging. Okay, let's aggressive. Let's go, let's go. Ouch. Every time I'm crossing here, I'm always a bit nervous around, yeah, that area there. Because many times you get punished here. especially at this stage of the game. Got some spotting there additional. That's definitely one of the things. Ouch. One of the things I really like about this tank is that you can use it so well into beautiful artsy hitters. You can use it so well into towards the scouting role. Beautiful. Especially during the phases where there are no more light tanks, like mid to late stage of the game. But it's quite often that there's nothing left. That archer is definitely not annoying me. Okay, beautiful. We've got him spotted, and let's show him. Let's show him what we think of him. One into him. Yeah, he's definitely not going to reload before we are. And let's finish him off. Beautiful. So it's 7-2. Let's see if we can clean up here from... Definitely got surrounded there. Beautiful. It's a nice high roll there. I'm amazed sometimes how good that actually hits. And of course, as I'm talking of it, it doesn't hit. Another good part of this tank is, like, now we can see it's already 8-4. Hopefully we should win this battle. But because it has that speed, it's really a nice advantage regarding when you want to just get the last HP at the battle end. Because you're not like stuck in a super heavy tank that is like slowly crawling ahead, but you can use your speed to your advantage to catch up whatever's left on the battlefield. You can see, guys, we're just racking up the damage. Yes, the alpha damage is not gigantic, but look, we only did 2,600 damage and 2,100 spotting. And this guy, yeah, he's gone. So 11-5. The interesting part here is that even this looks quite secure, the enemy has definitely won the city. Let's put some focus there back. And you can see, we're not even, we're far from fully aimed, and we still put in a beautiful shot into the ST1. Can we put into one? Yeah, guys, this is why I seriously enjoy this tank. Yes, of course, we'll have sometimes some RNG games where it simply cannot hit anything, but I guess you can have that in most of the tanks. What I'm trying to say is, this tank doesn't really have it as often as the other tanks. Yeah, isn't it ironic? Whenever I speak of praise the aiming, it just can't hit. Okay, 12-6, we got one. Well, our T-44-100 is capping out, so we are definitely bound by 30 seconds to get the last HP of damage. Yeah, beautiful. Not bad, not bad. Can we put in the last shot? No. 3,600 damage, 2,100 spotting, and 3 kills. Not bad. Let's take another, guys. Okay, this definitely looks interesting, because here we are on Karelia. Here I'm playing with Cobra 2K in his P-44 Pantera, and this map looks really interesting, because being top tier, like double top tier right now, is actually looks very promising. Of course, I should not jinx it and probably die over one shot now. But in all fairness, for this particular map, it's all about killing those light tanks in the beginning, because we really want to secure the mid. Okay, let's just... That was a beautiful sight to begin with. Hopefully some of our comrades can do it. We need to help out our light tanks here. It's very important to kill off their light tanks here. In my opinion, a victory on this assault map, it's all about killing those light tanks. Majority of the cases, and there's plenty of them here as we see. Because what I really want, I want to get towards the D4 location. That is definitely dangerous, as long as the enemy team have those light tanks. So let's see if we can spot some of those. It's of course always dangerous in this area, because you get spotted right here, you will most likely be completely destroyed by the tanks that will be F1 or even all the campy ones near their own cap circle. So let's see if we could use some of the advantage of our Type 62. It's hopefully going to spot something. Can we get a shot on that one? Nope. Okay, that one of the light tanks are there. Beautiful. And another. So we definitely got our work cut out for you. For us. And it definitely didn't get better by us losing our light tank. Pop, 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 pop. 2-3. Yeah. And ironically, all our light tanks are dead. It's interesting always to see what the enemy light tanks are doing. Especially when there's so many, because sometimes you just see some crazy playstyle by some of the light tanks on this map where they like go towards the heavy lines. Beautiful. This is what I mean regarding this tank can probably be used as a light tank. Yes, it's not as effective as a light tank, but it's really, really close. Okay, so we got AMX 1357. The question is whether he still stays there. Okay, let's do it, let's do it. I've got an ammo rack, come on, come on. Yeah, okay, beautiful. And to safety. Yeah, it's the irony. When you get up here, it's extremely hard for the enemy team to get your way. And this spot here is so vital. Let's see if we can get some spotting done now. Still quite close match, 4-3. Okay, the KV2 got spotted. Can we put in a... not yet, not yet. The thing also to notice here is that in the rear part we only have the Hummel, so we don't even have a tank destroyer, ironically. So usually you will have like some tank destroyers in that rear part to support you. But here we don't even have one. It looks a bit strange, this matchup so far. Ah, come on, come on, come on. Okay, definitely seems focused on the Churchill. Just slowly but surely removing some HP. Always a bit nervous when crawling around this area, but we are of course top tier, so we can take a bit more chances here. Wow. Ah, should have aimed properly on that one. Okay, I know that guy doesn't have that much HP. Okay, let's do some proper aim this time at least. There we go. We have the HP, so we can take this shot. And we can also bounce it. Push it to 4-6. A bit nervous attacking that guy at least. Okay. Now we fight his clip. Let's do it. See, my comrade is coming to support us. And that's why we can push. That was maybe a slightly too close. In hindsight, I could have waited easily. Maybe I should have done that, but done is done. Okay, we got the spotted the RT also. Almost. Interesting, interesting. There we go. Got 4 minutes left. This should be good. Just cleaning up the rest. Can't, of course, due to my HP, can't take too big chances. So let's see. Pop, 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 pop. Where the other guy is focusing. Can we? Impressive archer shots here. And let's get the last HP in. Beautiful. And the guy is on fire. Yeah. Check this, guys. 4,113 damage and 2,044 spotting. Beautiful. And this really shows how well this tank can take the light tank role. Beautiful. So, the T-44-100, what do I think of it, and most importantly, is it worth the gold? The thing is that the T-44-100 is not an easy tank to play well with, and seems in some way to be built primary for tank commanders who loves aggressive gameplay style in both the light and medium tanks. In some way, this tank reminds me of the LT-432 light tank, which can be played rather effective as a medium tank when the situations allows for it. The other thing is that with the T-44-100, you will definitely got your work cut out for you, because playing aggressively with a tank that doesn't feature either reliable armor, reliable gun penetration, and mediocre at best alpha damage can definitely be hard, especially if you are facing tier 9 or tier 10 tanks. To master this tank, in my humble opinion, you have to master the aggressive playstyle of two classes, meaning the light and medium tank, alongside having epic map knowledge, weak spot knowledge, knowing when to reposition, when to retreat, or when to attack. The thing is that with the T-44-100, it actually does something better than any of my other medium tanks in my garage. Whenever I perform well in this tank, I know that this performance was truly dependent on my personal performance behind the steering wheel. Not the tank itself, but the tank allowing me to showcase my best potential on the battlefield. So how many facepalms would I give this T8 T-44-100 Soviet Tier 8 premium medium tank? Well, you guessed it, it receives 5 facepalms. Yes, the tank is good, but it's good in the right hands. Give this tank to a less experienced player and it would not surprise me if they would throw it in the garbage can within days. I know that back in the days I would have done the exact same thing, where I would just be in the garage and collecting dust. Because if you ask me the question whether I like the tank with its current statistics, let's say 5 years ago, then I'm certain that I would have stated no, as at that time I more often did 10 big heavy or even tank destroyers to play with, and even when I played with lights, then I seemed more often than not chilling out safely in a forward located bush. In my opinion, what the T-44-100 have in common with my aggressive light tanks is that I try to only play this particular tank when my mind is fresh. Because one thing is for certain, this tank is not forgiving and is definitely not an easy tank to play well with. But when you do your best, then I still to this day get amazed of how amazing a tank it is with its amazing gun handling alongside its epic mobility. Yes, having a good game with my Projector 46 or even the CS52 list is just so much easier. But none of the other two tanks makes me smile as much, because when I perform my best in the T-44-100, then I truly know that the performance was primarily not due to that the tank is overpowered, but it was due to the perfect merge and synchronization between its tank commander and the tank itself. So yeah, T-44-100, simply awesome tank. But is it hard to play? Yeah, definitely, because it all relies on you. Okay guys, let's finish up. I hope that this tank review was helpful towards your decision on whether you should pick one up next time it is for sale in the premium shop. And thanks a lot for watching, guys. This was my tank review number 34. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think of the T-44-100 in the comments below. And as always, if you like to see more crazy content from my side, feel free to leave a like or even subscribe. It's a big thumbs up for me and I appreciate it a lot. Cheers guys, take care and see you next time.